The first thing they burned was her name. Then they tried to forget she ever screamed. In the eastern wing of the palace, far from the music, the incense, and the golden cradles, a woman is bleeding alone. Her name is Elsin, seventh wife of King Odrin the Radiant. No noble birth, no dowry, no title beyond a faint prophecy whispered years ago. From the plainest womb will come a blood that brings down crowns. Now, in the back room of the servant quarters, she is giving birth without priests, without guards, without even permission. Outside, the kingdom celebrates. A new prince, the king's 10th, has been born from Queen Althea, his favored consort. Fireworks scream through the night, drums echo in the streets, the nobles dance. Inside this small, damp room, a child slips into the world during a full eclipse. No cry, no light. She opens her eyes. Her left iris is ringed with black. And in that moment, the healer pulls back in fear. Cover the mirrors, he mutters. Do not let her reflection linger. No scroll is written. No wet nurse is summoned. A red thread is tied around the baby's wrist, a charm used only on cursed animals. When word reaches King Odrin, he is deep in wine. The messenger whispers, "Your Majesty, the seventh has delivered." Odrin doesn't look out. No son, a girl. A pause, cold, mechanical. Then she was never born. The child will be called Sarah, but only by her mother, and only in whispers. To the rest of the kingdom, she's a ghost that moves through laundry rooms and shadowed halls. She grows up in the wisteria wing, where cracked windows drip rain onto stone beds, and no lamp stays lit through the night. She is not taught to curtsy, or to dance, or to kneel. She learns to listen, to hide, and to remember everything. When she turns 7, the royal naming ceremony arrives. Every child born of royal blood is named and etched into the tree of lineage, a marble pillar kissed by sunlight and legends. But Sarah is not called. She waits behind a wooden door with her mother, dressed in hand-stitched linen, holding a strip of yellow ribbon. Her hands tremble with hope, the quiet, desperate kind. The kind that makes a child believe today will be different. Outside, she hears trumpets. Prince Kedrick, son of Queen Ismia. Prince Elric, son of Queen Moira. She looks at her mother, eyes wide. Will they say my name too? Elsin doesn't answer. She grips her daughter's hand tighter until it hurts. When the doors finally open, it is not for them. The captain of the guard steps out and says, almost kindly, "The ceremony is for children of record." Elsin drops to her knees. Rain soaks through her dress. Serelith doesn't cry. She's still waiting, waiting for the king, for someone, for anything. Inside the temple, King Odrin raises a goblet. 10 suns, 10 stars to guide my reign. That night, Serelith sits in front of a bronze mirror too rusted to reflect. She stares at it anyway. Why doesn't father see me? She asks, not angry, just afraid she might disappear. Queen Elsin takes a broken quill, dips it into her own blood, and writes Serelith on a cloth scroll. She kisses the child's head. As long as someone writes your name, the wind cannot carry you away. The next morning the scroll is gone, burned with the palace incense offerings. Ashes swirl in the air like ghosts too light to bury. 3 weeks later, Prince Fenric is found dead in his sleep. No wound, no blood. Just his eyes, wide, staring. A servant mutters, "He walked past her last night." Suddenly, the palace covers its mirrors. Curtains are drawn. Serelith is moved to a back chamber. She sees it in the way people avoid her gaze, in the way guards no longer bow. If Elsin had died that night, we wouldn't still be cursed. Queen Ismia, whispering in prayer. Serelith watches the smoke rise from a funeral pyre. No one lets her near the fire. She's too cold, too silent. And for the first time, she says her name out loud, alone in the dark. Serelith, daughter of a queen no one sees, I am still here. Sometimes, loyalty is just another word for waiting to be acknowledged. Serelith is 10 years old the first time she sees the king up close. It happens not in court, not at a banquet, but in the corridor between the Hall of Thrones and the Garden of Stone, an in-between place. Fitting because she's an in-between person, not forgotten, not remembered, just unnamed. She carries a tray of herbs, not for ceremony, just for her mother's cough. Then she sees him, King Odrin, towering. Cloaked in sapphire, flanked by guards, haloed in torchlight, she freezes. The tray tilts. Rosemary and rue scatter across the floor like spilled blessings. Her voice comes out raw, untrained. Father. He stops, turns, looks at her, not with recognition, not with rage, but with confusion, like someone trying to place a song they once heard in a dream and then forgot. A long pause. Then he walks past her, not a word, not a nod. Just the swish of velvet robes brushing against stone, and a name still hanging in the air, unanswered. Maybe he didn't hear me. That's what she tells herself, every night for the next 4 years. Queen Elsin teaches her daughter what no one else will, how to sit without being noticed, how to nod without drawing attention, how to blend into furniture when the noble wives walk past. But Serelith takes it further. She steals books from the disused library wing, reads treaties, war records, religious doctrines. She memorizes every name on the bloodline wall, even the ones carved over. You'll break your mind with all that remembering, Elsin warns. Serelith only answers, maybe then they'll have to call me clever, if not royal. She mimics the posture of her stepmothers, the accent of Queen Vela, the composure of Queen Althea. But in her eyes, there's always a question. Will any of this make me real? A tailor, confused by palace orders, delivers a ceremonial gown to the wrong wing. A gown meant for Princess Serene, the niece of Queen Ismia. It ends up in Serelith's hands. For a moment, just a moment, she lets herself imagine the hallway lights, the echo of trumpets, her name said out loud. She wears the gown that night, alone, in her room, a cracked mirror balanced on her knees. She practices her curtsy. She says, I am Princess Serelith of House Odrin. It feels strange, like trying on someone else's face. The next morning, the gown is taken back. No apology, no words, just gone. At a midsummer banquet, Serelith is allowed, for the first time, to sit at the edge of the great hall, not with the princes, not with the queens, not even at a real table, a bench behind a column. But still she sees him, Odrin, laughing, drinking, his crown glinting beneath golden torches. Then it happens. He looks toward her, not past her, at her. For a single breathless moment his eyes narrow, he tilts his head, then his lips part just slightly. Isilene, he mutters. The name does not belong to her. It belongs to his sister, the one who vanished years ago, the one he once loved too closely and buried without a tomb. After that night, her life changes. New clothes, her food brought warm. A royal tutor visits once a week. He doesn't say why. She's moved to a better room, closer to the center of the palace. Elsin grows quiet, watchful. She warns her daughter, when the king gives you things, he does not give them for free. But Serelith wants to believe. Maybe he finally sees me, she says. Maybe this is what being acknowledged feels like. What she doesn't know is that the king does see her now, but not as a daughter. He sees the way her jawline mirrors his sister's, the tilt of her head. He asks for sketches, has her likeness painted, not for records, not for history. Serelith begins to feel the shift in the air. Gifts are left on her bed. Perfume, silks, hair ornaments, not in the style of children but of women. A mirror is delivered, polished, impossibly clear. She stands before it. Her face stares back. She is real, she is seen. But somewhere inside her, a tiny voice whispers, "This is not the way a daughter should be seen." They didn't exile her. They simply stopped including her in the world. It was the day of the royal lineage etching, a sacred ceremony held every 5 years to carve the names of all living heirs into the marble tree of succession. The names were sung aloud by the royal cantor, each followed by the blowing of a conch horn. The gathered nobles clapped and bowed. Scrolls were unfurled. Paintings were unveiled. Serelith stood behind a curtain. Her heart, calm on the outside, beat like a caged drum inside her chest. She knew this would be the day her name was finally called. She had new robes. Her hair was arranged in the braid of royal blood. Even Queen Althea nodded in her direction that morning, silent acknowledgement, but acknowledgement nonetheless. Then the cantor began. Prince Kedrick, Prince Dane, Prince Thalen, Prince Corran. Name after name. Each syllable felt like a step further away. Each pause like a window closing. Her name never came, not even by accident. At the post-ceremony banquet, Serelith walks past the table of blood. A chair bears her name, carved in chalk. But before she can reach it, a servant wipes it clean. Not maliciously, not hurriedly, just matter of fact, as if she had never existed there in the first place. Must have been a mistake, the servant says to no one in particular. Serelith stands, frozen. For the first time in years, she doesn't know where to sit. And for the first time, she begins to understand. If I stay still long enough, they will forget I breathe. A week later, a royal decree arrives, not from the king directly, but sealed in crimson wax. Princess Serelith shall be relocated to the temple of Saint Halwyn for spiritual renewal. A duration indefinite. There is no explanation, no farewell audience, no moment to speak. She is escorted out of the palace before sunrise, wearing traveling robes too big for her shoulders. "It's just for your health," a lady-in-waiting lies softly. "Your presence is a little too visible right now." Queen Elsin, wild-eyed, tries to follow, but is stopped by guards. She screams, not aloud, but through every inch of her trembling frame. Serelith does not look back. She wants to, but her silence has become armor, and armor does not turn around when it's being removed from the battlefield. A month into her exile, Serelith hears of the newly built pillar of purity in the palace garden, commissioned by the king himself. It bears the names of all worthy heirs. Hers is not there. She writes it down in the corner of her prayer book instead. Small, cramped. At night, she recites the list under her breath, adding her name last, as if trying to convince God it belongs. One cold night in the temple dormitory, Serelith dreams of a feast. She walks among familiar faces, unseen. The king sits at the head of the table, smiling. He raises a glass and says, "To the one child I never had." Everyone laughs. She wakes up with the taste of iron in her mouth. She's bitten through her own tongue in her sleep. A courier from the palace arrives. He brings a sealed scroll, not for Serelith, for the abbess. Inside is a request. Do not mention the girl in any temple records. She is not recognized as a royal by the throne of light. The abbess, a woman of rigid silence, nods. That night, Serelith finds the temple archives and sees her entry. A single line. Subject arrived under no formal title. Identity, transitional. She takes the ink brush, dips it, writes underneath, "My name is Serelith. I was born under an eclipse. I remember everything." You can kill a voice, but what if the voice learns to whisper through stone? The room they gave her at the temple was carved entirely of stone. No windows, one door, a slit for meals. The monks called it the Chamber of Reflection. But it wasn't meant for meditation. It was meant for forgetting. 3 weeks, they told her, then you'll be clear. She stayed 6 months, not because she agreed, but because no one came to fetch her. There were scratch marks behind the prayer bench, old ones, names half erased, a thumb-sized heart carved above one, Callan. Another symbol beside it, a crowned eye crossed out. Someone else had been here before, many someones. Serelith began adding her own, a mark for each memory she refused to let die. Her mother's laugh, the scent of cedar from the royal tapestries, the sharp burn of the king's indifference. She made a language out of symbols. Her entire childhood condensed into a code that only someone who'd been forgotten would understand. "If I vanish," she whispered, tracing the wall with her nail, "this will remain, and it will speak." Once a week, she was allowed to walk in the garden at dusk. A grey-robed woman often passed her there, never speaking. But one evening, as the fog curled low over the lilies, the woman handed Serelith a folded scrap of fabric. Inside, a single braid of silver thread, a royal birth token. "You're not the only daughter they erased," the woman said before disappearing into the mist. Serelith stood there long after the bells rang. For the first time, her silence was not isolation, but shared pain. In the library's restricted section, she found a copy of the Treatise on Succession, a banned manuscript that once caused civil war. She read it under candlelight, each page trembling in her hands. Inside, she found the law. The throne shall pass by blood, regardless of womb or decree. No footnote, no exception. She underlined it with her own hairpin. Then she wrote her name beneath it, Serelith Odran, born of blood, buried by shame. One night she slipped into the shrine of St. Halwyn and stood before the flame altar, barefoot on cold stone. She bled her palm, let the blood fall into the oil bowl, and spoke aloud, not to the gods but to herself. "If I am a shadow, then let me haunt them. If I am a mistake, then let me become the one they regret. I will not fade. I will remember, even when they refuse." The flame cracked, the oil hissed, and for the first time she smiled, not in joy, but in clarity. Weeks later, a stable boy found a letter hidden beneath the saddle of a temple mule, unmarked, unsealed, no sender. Inside it read, "The 12th heir is alive. She writes in the walls, and the walls do not forget." The letter found its way into the wrong hands, or perhaps the right ones. And in the palace, far away, Queen Vela awoke in sweat, whispering, "She's still alive, the girl, the cursed one." The difference between obedience and survival is what you choose to remember in silence. Buried beneath a cracked floor tile in the temple's defunct west wing, Serilith discovered it. A book, bound in oiled leather, burnt at the corners, smelling of ink, rot, and wax. Inside, not prayers, not doctrine, but the bloodlines of royal bastards. Children never named, mothers never crowned, some crossed out, others underlined, some marked with a dagger, one with a crown. And there, hidden in a corner of a page, was the phrase, "Daughter of Odran, 7th Queen, born under eclipse, designation unknown." Her hand trembled. "They wrote me down once," she whispered, "which means I can be written down again. But this time, I will write myself." In the temple's root cellar lived a blind old scribe. He wasn't permitted to write anymore, said to be mad. But he still hummed verses in his sleep, old hymns once outlawed by King Odran himself. Serilith brought him wine, herbs, listened to his ramblings. One night he murmured, "Names are bones, you bury them and they still speak." She asked him, "If I gave you my name, would you remember it?" He laughed, "I don't forget ghosts, girl. And that's what you are." She told him everything, and for the next 6 weeks, he copied her life story in secret, by touch, by sound, by memory, 12 scrolls, each sealed in wax bearing her blood. One night, Serilith returns to her scratched wall, now nearly full, and draws one last symbol, a tree without roots, its branches on fire. The next morning, the abbess enters her room to find the wall scrubbed. The scratch is gone. The bed empty. Serilith has vanished. But hours later, throughout the temple, etched into every well, every wooden beam, every cracked stone, is the same burning tree. No name, no signature, but everyone knows who made it. The first monk to see it whispers, "She's not hiding anymore." From nunnery to cloister, from stable to inn, from back alley in the capital to old man's forge in the north, the scrolls move. Each one is passed quietly, secretly. The seal is never broken, but word spreads. A girl writes from exile. She remembers things that weren't supposed to be remembered. Old nobles start whispering over wine. "Did you hear? The girl, the eclipse-born." The king hears it too. And in a fit of cold panic, he burns the temple of Halwyn to the ground. But Serilith is no longer there. She was never meant to stay. In the forests west of the capital, a red-robed rider appears at shrines and graveyards. She speaks to no one, leaves behind sigils drawn in bird blood. The pattern is clear. She is retracing the steps of the old rebellion that dethroned Odran's father. One priest dares speak to her. "What are you planning, child?" She doesn't answer. Instead, she hands him one of her scrolls and says, "History is a blade. I've been its sheath long enough." In the catacombs beneath the crumbling southern watchtower, Serilith uncovers the last known copy of the first King's Charter. Inside it is a line the crown had buried. "No heir born of royal blood shall be unmade by silence." She copies the line onto her forearm in ink, then carves it lightly with a pin, just deep enough to scar. She becomes her own document. In the heart of the palace, a minor court official named Elrond, a man no one notices, whose job is just to polish the royal seals, finds something in the library stacks. A page removed from a succession record. It has Serelith's name on it. He remembers her, the girl in the wrong gown, the one who curtsied to a reflection. And for the first time in his quiet life, Elrond chooses to betray the king. He slips the page into his sleeve and walks away from the only life he ever knew. Serelith kneels alone in a hidden crypt, surrounded by statues of unnamed women. She lights a single candle. The flame trembles. Then she speaks. "Let the throne forget me. Let the bloodline deny me. I will write myself in ash and ruin. And when they finally look down from their tower, they will see my name spelled out in their crumbling walls. You buried me like a mistake. I returned as a sentence." A thunderstorm batters the capital. Lightning claws the stained glass windows of the Grand Court. Inside, a royal tribunal is being held. Accused. Lord Telvan, a longtime advisor, suspected of falsifying succession records. But as he stands chained before the court, he does not tremble. He smiles. "I forged nothing," he says, and tosses a scroll at the throne. "I simply restored a name." The scroll unrolls down the steps of the dais. The wax seal broken, the signature unmistakable. King Odrin S, dated 15 years ago. The name, Serelith, born of Elsin, 7th Queen. The courtroom falls into silence. Even the Queen Consort's wine goblet stops midair. And in that breathless hush, a cloaked figure steps through the hall doors. Dripping wet, hood down, eyes steady. Serelith, she does not bow. She does not raise her voice. She simply walks forward, places a blood-stained page on the marble floor and says, "I was born in the palace chapel. I bled on these stones when I fell running to my father. You erased me. I came to remind you." King Odrin does not move. "Who let her in?" he whispers, but no one answers, because no one can claim they didn't know. Queen Vaela, his consort, rises in fury. She's not royal. She's the daughter of a concubine, of a forgotten. Serelith cuts her off, voice ice sharp. "Say her name, if you dare." Silence. "You can't, can you? Because you had her tongue cut out, didn't you?" The nobles gasp. "I read it. In the red records, your signature beside the order." The court cannot ignore it now. Lord Telvan places 3 scrolls on the witness table, Serelith's sealed testimony. Signed, witnessed, carried from monastery to monastery. And one final piece, the hair locket of Queen Elsin, found buried beneath the temple of Halwyn, along with a letter. "For my daughter, if the day comes when they no longer fear her." The king crumbles, not from attack, but from revelation. His eyes sink, his lips twitch, and for the first time in a decade, he whispers her name, Serelith. The tribunal breaks tradition. Serelith is invited to speak. She declines. "You heard my voice when I was silent. Now you will live with my silence as testimony." Instead, she leaves behind a single sealed scroll, tied with a thorned ribbon. On the cover, "Truth doesn't require your permission." She walks out as the storm outside breaks into sunrise. A week later, Queen Vaela's coat of arms is removed from the royal chamber. The official succession line is edited publicly for the first time in decades. But Serelith doesn't return to court. She disappears. They say she was seen boarding a ship alone. Others say she lives in a ruined cloister, teaching girls to read. No one knows for sure, but letters begin arriving at noble houses across the continent, written in the same coded symbols once scratched into stone. They all bear the same line. The crown is not a throne. It's what you refuse to kneel to. One afternoon, as the court prepares for a feast, a gust of wind tears down a massive tapestry, revealing an old, half-forgotten mural behind it. A mural of the royal family, faded, torn, but still visible. At the edge, a girl in eclipse robes, hand outstretched, never painted fully. Until now, someone has filled her in, with ink, with care, with her full name beneath. Serelith Elsin Odrin, the voice that returned. They feared I would come with fire. I came with mirrors. At the peak of winter, the royal cathedral is turned into a court of reckoning. Its great columns are veiled in black silk. Candles burn in iron cages. The choir sings not hymns, but dirges of confession. And the nobles of Odrin's court are forced to gather, not for celebration, but for public judgment. This is Serelith's doing. It is the king's. After months of silence, he has called for a purging of falsehoods, an attempt to redeem his legacy before death. But Serelith knows better. He wants to bury guilt with ceremony. I will not let it die clean. One by one, the courtiers are led in, hooded, bound, then unmasked in front of tapestries bearing their crimes. A bishop who silenced mothers of royal bastards. A steward who altered baptism records. A noblewoman who reported Elsin's screams as noise from the servants' quarters. Each one forced to read their own confession aloud, written in Serelith's own hand. This is not vengeance, she whispers to the scribe beside her. It is archaeology. Behind her, the people chant. What was hidden, we will name. What was erased, we will remember. In the palace's crypt, long sealed and desecrated, workers uncover the sarcophagus of Queen Elsin. Her body is found not beneath the royal stone, but walled behind an altar, curled into a fetal pose. Beside her, a broken flute, a bloodied cloth, and a scroll written in her hand. If my daughter ever finds me, tell her I sang her name as they sealed the bricks. The finding breaks the court. The priests attempt to deny its authenticity, but Serelith steps forward, flute in hand, and plays a tune. It is a lullaby, one the king himself sang years ago to a girl he denied ever existed. He crumbles to his knees and begins to weep blood. Odrin calls Serelith to his bedside. His skin is pale, his tongue blistered, his eyes clouded. He's been drinking a slow poison, self-inflicted. You came for your crown, he asks. Serelith shakes her head. No, I came to ruin yours. She places the broken flute beside his bed, then turns away. Let your ghosts feast with you tonight. That night, the palace servants hear the king screaming. He screams until dawn. When they enter, the room is empty. All that remains is a cracked mirror, and in it, scratched in with a fingernail, 5 words. She was never a mistake. In a ceremony unlike any other, the nobles of 7 houses are brought before Serelith, not in court, but in the ruined garden of the Temple of Halwyn. She does not sit on a throne. She stands barefoot in the snow, dressed in her mother's burial shroud. One by one, she gives each noble a stone. "These are your judgments," she says. "They weigh what I carried." Some fall to their knees. Others throw the stones into the snow, hoping to forget. But the snow does not melt, and the stones remain. The cathedral is burned, not by Serilith's hand, but by one of the girls she taught. As the fire consumes the spires, the stained glass collapses inward. One final image glows in the blaze before shattering. A girl in eclipse robes, eyes open, mouth sealed. For the first time in generations, the entire capital watches a symbol die and a truth rise. "She was never meant to speak," says one priest, "but she made us all listen." The throne room remains empty. A single chair in a hall of silence. Upon the cushion, someone has placed the thorned ribbon once tied around Serilith's scrolls. No guards, no banners, no crown, just air and the echo of a sentence. "You feared I would come for power. But all I ever wanted was memory." Some kingdoms are not built with stone, but with scars that remember. Decades later, in the far north of the fractured kingdom, children gather around a stone statue in the middle of a field. It shows a woman in eclipse robes, kneeling, one hand over her heart, the other holding nothing. There is no plaque, no name, only a carving at the base, barely visible under moss. She left the throne untouched, but made the world tremble. In the ashes of the old temple of Halwan, a stone schoolhouse stands. Inside, girls learn to read, quietly, steadily, some barefoot, some orphaned, all unafraid. On the wall, in faded ink, are the 12 emblems of the old noble houses, each marked with a red line across it, and beside them, a tree with no roots, its branches still on fire. One student asks the teacher, "Is that the royal seal?" The teacher smiles. "No, that's the royal wound." A new council forms, no longer called court, but Remembrance Council. It includes no kings, no crowns, just witnesses. Among them, an old man named Elrond, once a servant in the palace, now head archivist. He reads aloud from a scroll titled, "The Name They Tried to Erase." It contains Serilith's words, transcribed long after she vanished. "I do not want statues. I want silence to speak. I want shame to echo louder than trumpets. And I want girls to never again be called mistakes." No one knows where she died, but one legend says a woman in red was seen walking into the Whitewood, carrying only a flute and a knife. She was never seen again. But weeks later, villagers found something hanging from a tree, a string of 12 scrolls bound with thorned ribbon. No message, no signature, but every scroll began with the same line, "I remember my name. Will you remember yours?" In the final shot, a pair of hands opens a tattered book. The title page reads, "Serilith the Uncrowned." As the pages turn, we see ink fading, then returning, because the book is being rewritten by a child, a girl. She looks up into the camera and then asks, "What would you do if history forgot you?" Some stories don't end with coronations. They end with remembrance. Not every name makes it into the official records, but every truth leaves a shadow. Serilith didn't become queen. She became a mirror, one that forced a kingdom to look at its ugliest truths. Backhand index pointing right, and now I want to hear from you. If you were erased from history, like Serilith, Would you choose to disappear quietly? Or would you fight to make the silence scream? Speaking, drop your thoughts in the comments. Pushbin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because history belongs to those who tell it.